Most people think the difference between those who survive life's hardest seasons and those who just kind of give up at the first sign of a struggle comes down to something like raw intelligence, or maybe sheer willpower, or even just dumb luck. But there is actually something far more powerful than any of those things. It's having a reason to keep going. Think about it. The moment you lose sight of why you're doing what you're doing, even the smallest daily tasks begin to feel absolutely exhausting. Every single day starts to look exactly the same. You wake up, you go to work, you solve endless problems, you come home tired, fall asleep, and then you just wake up and repeat the whole thing all over again. Have you ever noticed that you can be completely, totally exhausted at the end of the week, but still feel like you've gone absolutely nowhere? It is a terrible, sinking feeling. And what's really crucial to understand here is that eventually, it's not the heavy workload that drains you, it's the heavy reality of feeling like your life is moving without a destination. The greatest challenge in life actually isn't suffering. The truth is, everyone suffers at some point, right? The real challenge is suffering without a purpose. Pain always feels exponentially heavier when it seems meaningless. When there's no deeper reason behind the struggle, every single ounce of effort just feels like this monumental weight dragging you down. When there's no correlated benefit, it's easy enough to believe that anything you can do just won't matter at all. And because of that, there are two major traps we tend to fall into when we don't have a destination. On one hand, you've got busy without direction. This is when people stay incredibly active but never actually feel fulfilled. They confuse movement with progress. They feel literally every hour of the day answering emails, chasing down deadlines, checking off endless to-do lists. They're productive, sure, but they aren't actually growing. On the other hand, you have people who are endlessly waiting. They fall into the exact opposite trap. They wait for Monday, they wait for the new year, they wait until they finally feel motivated or for that one perfect, elusive opportunity. But while they're waiting, life just keeps moving right past them. So the point is this: whether you're constantly busy without direction or endlessly waiting to begin, the underlying problem is exactly the same. You just don't know where you're going. So let's talk about the motivation myth. We live in a modern world that is constantly preaching the gospel of motivation. We're told that if we just find the right quote, the perfect morning routine, or that right sudden burst of energy, everything will finally fall into place. We treat motivation like it's a magic key. But honestly, maybe we've been looking at this entirely the wrong way. Maybe the very thing we're relying on to push us forward is actually a false god of modern productivity. Purpose is the reason you keep showing up when motivation fades. Here's the truth that so many people misunderstand. Purpose is not the same thing as motivation. Motivation is totally fleeting. It comes and goes like the weather. Some mornings you're going to wake up completely inspired, ready to conquer the world, and other mornings you simply won't feel like doing anything at all. But purpose doesn't disappear when motivation does. Purpose is that deep, unshakable anchor. It's what gets you out of bed when you don't feel like it. It's what keeps you learning when progress is painfully slow, and it is what helps you stay disciplined when absolutely nobody is watching. When you actually discover a quiet purpose worth living for, something kind of magical happens in your daily life. Decisions just become clearer. You finally stop wasting your precious energy trying to please everyone around you. You learn to start saying no to empty distractions and yes to what actually aligns with the future you're trying to build. Your focus shifts completely away from just doing more and instead locks onto doing what actually matters. Having that steady purpose, it serves as an internal compass, guiding you flawlessly through all the noise and the chaos. Which brings us to the invisible work of growth. This is really the emotional core of this entire shift in perspective. We have to start getting comfortable with the idea that real, authentic growth rarely looks like progress from the outside, at least not at first. When you transition from relying on motivation to relying on purpose, you step into a phase of life where the most important foundational work you do goes completely unnoticed by the rest of the world. Think about how a tree grows. Before a mighty tree ever reaches out toward the sky, what does it do? For the first month, it builds roots underground. 6 months in, it's still expanding those roots, entirely underground. From the outside, it looks like absolutely nothing is happening, but beneath the surface, everything is changing. And your life works in the exact same way. The daily habits you build today, the quiet discipline you practice, those small choices that nobody notices, they are quietly creating the person you will become tomorrow. Your foundation is being poured, even if no one can see the building yet. The problem is, we live in a culture completely obsessed with instant results. Everyone wants overnight success. But think about the things that truly matter in life: character, wisdom, trust, strong relationships, a meaningful career. Literally none of these can be rushed.
The greatest and most meaningful achievements are almost always the result of consistent effort, repeated long after the initial excitement has faded. You just have to be willing to put in the time when the work is tedious and completely unglamorous.
And that leads perfectly into becoming who you need. If we want to truly move from fleeting motivation to a really grounded sense of purpose, we have to completely move away from constantly chasing external achievements. Instead, we have to focus our energy on cultivating our internal identity. It is all about looking inward before we ever try to conquer the world outward. Society constantly trains us to obsess over one specific question. What do I want to achieve? We're told to set goals, to make these rigid 5-year plans, to map out all our external milestones. But setting this as your primary focal point, it's actually a trap. It places your entire sense of self-worth on external outcomes that you often cannot fully control. It's just the wrong focal point for building a resilient, purpose-driven life.
So let's just cross out that old mindset entirely. Instead of asking what you want to achieve, maybe the much better question is, who do I need to become? Because goals will inevitably change, circumstances will absolutely change, but the person you become internally, that shapes every single opportunity you will ever have in the future. When you grow internally, your external results eventually begin to reflect that profound inner growth. You stop frantically chasing the destination, and you just start becoming the kind of person who naturally arrives there.
Now, a lot of people think that having a purpose requires some dramatic, world-changing mission. But let me reassure you, purpose doesn't have to be extraordinary. More often than not, a deeply meaningful life is built through completely ordinary responsibilities. Taking care of your family, consistently developing your skills, serving others well, becoming someone people can undeniably trust. Great lives are rarely built through one-off, dramatic, cinematic moments. They're built through these ordinary responsibilities carried out with extraordinary consistency every single day. Of course, you can't control everything that happens to you. There will always be unexpected setbacks, deep uncertainty, disappointment, and inevitable loss. A meaningful life isn't a life without problems, but you can always choose the meaning you give to those painful experiences. You have the ultimate power to decide if pain is the end of your story or the beginning of your growth. When you know why you're moving forward, every single challenge stops being a roadblock and instead becomes just another brick in the foundation of the person you are actively becoming. So instead of endlessly asking yourself how to get more motivated, I want you to ask yourself a very different question today. What kind of future is worth becoming the person it requires? Let that question sit with you for a minute. Let it completely change the way you face every obstacle from this day forward. The answer might not solve every problem overnight, but it shifts your entire perspective. And sometimes, a quiet new direction is all it takes to create an entirely new life.